Hello everyone, welcome to the 35th of iOS tutorial. In this tutorial, we will talk about creating Popover, both for iPad and iPhone. So let's move on. Okay, here's the final app that you will see at the end of this tutorial. We have a simple text view, and we have two buttons here. And if I select any word here and pressing plus button, it will add it to a table view and inside of the popover and shows it to the popover. So if I add another word, plus, and it will show to the next. So let's create it. Okay, let's create a new project. Single view, we want it universal, both for iPad and iPhone. Popover. Next, create, and let's just move some unnecessary files into the supporting folder so you don't get distracted. Yes, here. So we have storyboard and one simple view controller. And what do we need here? We need a title bar here, so it would show our plus button. So toolbar, we just drag it, drop it here. We know that it needs some constraint for the view, so we add the constraint here. And did something. And let's first select it and then come here. And this one, if you are not familiar with auto layout, you want to watch our auto layout tutorial. And then we need a text view. Text view. Drag it. We needed the whole view. So then again we add the constraints. We want it to stick to all four edges. And we need two buttons here. One of the buttons are here. So we can just go ahead and give it some style. Or we can just simply remove it and add it UI bar button item here. Okay, the first one is here. We can just give it at, and we can have another one, and this one has bookmarks, yes. So we have these two buttons. Now we want to have a popover to show the items or words that we want. Because we want to show the items inside of the table view, so we drag a table view controller inside of the storyboard. And since we want to launch the table view from this button, we control drag to this view. And from the opening view, we select present as popover. So as soon as we select, it will show a segue like this. So if I click on it, I can give it an identifier here, like popover. And then we have a cell here. So we want to have a basic that has only a title here. And let's give it an identifier as text. So this is from the storyboard. Now let's connect this add button to the view controller. If I go to the split view, it shows me the view controller. We don't need this part. And we also don't need this view load. Let's just create an action from this button to here, and we call it add to favorite. of course it's UI button and connect. That's all from the storyboard. If I run the application at this point on iPad and click on this bookmark button, I would have a blank popover with nothing inside of it because we have not implemented anything. But let's also create an outlet for this text view. So we call it text view. So we can access the properties here. And let's switch to one view at a time. So we have this outlet, and let's create an array to store all of the text that we want to save. So we call it strong and non-atomic, and it should be NS mutable array because we want to create an array, and this array should be editable. So I created as a type NS mutable array. And what it should do, first when they select the text here, when they select the text, I want to see, first of all I have to make it editable here. So when you click on the text view, it should not be editable, but it should be selectable. So make sure that it's selectable, and I usually put this, so it's now selected. It's selectable, and when I go back here, I have to find this word, find the range. For example, this is the 200th character until 208 or 9, so I don't know how many characters it has. And it should find the range, and then from the range it should find the text at that range. So we would say UI text range, and we call it selected range equals self dot text view and selected text range. This is the method that we need, and it gets the range for us, and then we have to convert it to a string, and we have to get the text from that part. So set selected text equals, and this time we'll say self dot text view and text in range. Text in range. This one. And what range? We have to pass the selected range. That's how we add it. And now we can add it simply to our array. The text. So we would say self. Oh my god, it doesn't recognize self with the primary. Self dot text. This is our array, and add object. And we add this selected text inside of our array. So we can simplify all of these by just saying we can just add this one instead of adding a new variable. We can add this one here and get rid of this, and we can add this inside of here and get of this new variable. So we have one line of code that adds everything into that array. But before that, we have to initialize our array. So the best place for initializing the array is its getter. So ns mutable array, and we say texts, and we have to miss this, okay. And we say if the text is undefined or null, we want to initialize it. So with text equals to ns mutable array alloc, and it's all we're doing is initializing our array, this array, to have some value, and then we return text. That's all we have to do for this view controller and for adding the objects. Now we need a class for this view. This is a table view controller. So let's create a new file and Cocoa Touch class here. Next. And it's a table view controller. So we call it Popover Table View Controller, or TVC. Next, and it's in the right place. Create, and it creates all of the information for the table view controller. Okay, let's clean up this view controller that we just created. We don't need this commented out. We don't need this function. We definitely need number of section. We need this function to define a cell for us, and we don't need these commented out functions. So our view controller is very simple, and this reuse identifier for cell, if you remember, if you go back to the storyboard and inspect this, you'd see that we define that text. So I call it texts. So now we have to change here. Here should be also texts. So that's it. We can remove this warning, and we have only one section in our table view, and we can hard code it here. And what else we need? We need an array here as well. So but this array should be public, so we can read it from this file. So I would put it in .h file instead of .m in order to make it public. Property non-atomic strong ns mutable array, and I will call it highlight array. And if I go back to .m file, we have to initialize it exactly like the one that we initialized here. So I'll just copy paste this in this file, but we have to rename it. And this is called highlight array, and everything array, and that's it. Okay, so we have the array right now. We need to okay, so what is the number of the row? So it's definitely the item of the array, number of the item of the array. So we can simply say self dot highlighted array dot count, and it returns the number of the items inside of the array. And then in order to get the text out of each item, we can just simply here say cell dot text label dot text, and this is the place that we set the text for this label, this title. Set the text for this title. If you're not familiar with table view, you can watch the table view tutorial. And we can say self dot highlighted array object at index. We want the object at index that has index path. We index path dot row. So that's all for setting up the table view of the popover. So we can go back to our view controller, and we can initialize this inside of this function. If you remember, this is the place that we prepare for segue. And when the view controller is ready to show, wants to get ready to show, this function will be called. So it's the best place to initialize our view controller, our popover. So we can I already imported that file. We can just import the file that we created. And now here we can say if segue identifier. This is the identifier that we defined here in storyboard here. We called it popover. So we want to make sure that the identifier is matched with the one that we are selecting. So we can say is equal to string, and if you double click on it, it will add sign popover, and we close the bracket. If this is the identifier, now we want to create an object from the popover. So it's good to have a property for it. Add sign property strong non-atomic, and it's the popover TVC type, and we call it popover TVC. And down here we can say self dot popover TVC is equal to segue destination. If you're not familiar with this function, prepare for segue. Just watch the tutorial that we completely explained about this function, and you will get some idea what does it mean. So self dot popover TVC. Now we set the array that we defined in .h file in popover. We set this with equal with the array that we have here, texts. So I would say this one is equal self.text. So it adds all of the items that we add inside of this array equals to highlighted array inside of the popover. So that's all we have to do for showing the items. So let's just go ahead and run it. Okay, as soon as I run the application, it crashed, and it's because we never set the this view controller, didn't assign the popover TVC to this view controller. All you have to do is just select the view controller, and on this tab we can select show the identify inspector. We can select the class, which is popover TVC. So now if I click on this, it should have popover TVC, and we can run the application. Okay, here's the app. If I add, if I inspect, it adds it to the table view, another word, and it's working fine. Let's just run it on iPhone this time and see what would happen on iPhone 6, for example. Okay, here is our iPhone 6. It has 100% scale. That's what you see. It's huge. And let's add a word here, maybe 2, and look at our popover. Whoa, what the heck? Where is our popover? Why it took all of the view? So this is the place that iPhone and iPad are different at this point in terms of popover. The popover for iPad is small, that it shows with the triangle pointing and a small view inside of another view. But for iPhone, it's a modal view. We already talked about modal view, but this time, if you don't define popover to present it as a popover in iPhone, it would show it by default as modal. So in order to avoid this and have the whole view, we have to implement the delegate. What delegate? Here's the delegate that you have to implement. It's UI Popover presentation controller delegate. It's a very long delegate. So this is a place, this is the first step. The next step, we have to put ourselves equal to, I'm sorry, it's in the popover. We should implement it inside of the view controller. Yep, here. We have to implement it here because we want to present the popover in this view. So it should be here. And then we have to put our self equal, delegate equal to self. So we would say self dot popover tvc dot popover presentation controller dot delegate equals to self. And this is the place that we put our self equal to self, delegate equal to self. And we have to implement the delegate method to tell the iOS that we want to show it as a popover, not the modal view. And the adaptive presentation controller, yeah, should be the first one. And all we have to do inside of this function, we have to say return and say UI modal presentation none. Now let's run the application and see what happens after this change. So if I go back to our, here is our view, I add 2 items, and look at our lovely popover. So this is how we change it to a popover in iPhone. Now I want to add something else. See, look at this popover. It's very big for some non items. So I want to have the popover size based on the content. So let's go back to our code and fix this. In order to get the right content size, we have to ask the view that has the content to give us the size. So for us, we need to ask the popover to give us the size and draw it correctly. So here's a place that we can define our logic. We can say if we have the table view, because we want to define the size of the table view. So this is a view that we need the size. If it's not nil, and if also self dot presenting view controller is not nil. What is presenting view controller? Presenting view controller is the controller that is currently presenting the view. It is very simple. At the time we have some view controller and we want to make sure that this is not nil, then it goes to this if statement. So then what I can use, I can say self dot preferred content size. This is the place that we define the size for this table view, and by using this property that has for each view. So we say preferred content size is equal the size of the table view, of course, table view, and we say size that fits. So we want to fit this size, and all we have to do, we have to say pass this one. Pass this presenting view controller size. You can say self.presenting view controller dot view dot bounds dot size. So that's how we override the preferred content size. So let's just run it and see if it behaves and show the content size correctly. So I have one item plus Now it just showed me one item and the size is completely correct. So that's all for this tutorial. Hope it was helpful for you. Until next time.